With skyrocketing prices everywhere on everything, is the dollar menu still a thing? Well, it is at my house, and today I'm taking 2 rotisserie chickens to feed my crew 4 delicious meals. We're gonna start with some bulk prep and take these meals from pantry to plate. The first step in getting this all underway is to go to your local store, whatever that may be. For me, it was Walmart, and grab a couple of rotisserie chickens. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase and end with the same news that I ended with last time I did one of these. I could have got by with 1 chicken to feed my crew of 7 all of these awesome meals, but I always get nervous about running out, so bought the second just in case. What that means for me is we're actually going to stretch this way more than the 4 meals that you've already seen here today. Now, I started off my prep by going ahead and pulling all of that meat off of the bone and then separating out the bones into one bowl as well as the chicken into the other. I'm going to turn those bones into some chicken stock that I'll use later down the road. I'm not going to show you that today, but the meat itself is now ready to go the next day. The last thing that I did before I went to bed was grab some flour, sourdough starter, and some water, a little bit of salt, and threw together my recipe for tortilla shells. If you've never made homemade tortilla shells, I want to assure you it is not as hard as you think. I'm working on perfecting this recipe, and when I get it exactly right, I will make sure to share. But for now, I'll put the recipe that I'm working off of down below. Now, I let that set overnight, and the next morning I got up to complete the rest of my prep. The first thing that I'm starting with today is my homemade sandwich bread. Now, I will say I'm making a lot of things that you can buy at the store, and yes, they don't cost much money, but they actually are way more expensive than when you make them at home, and also, of course, a different quality of ingredients. So if you don't have the time or interest to make your bread, tortillas, or anything else that I'm going to show you here today, skip it, right? Do what works best for your family. I will tell you, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would be making homemade bread and tortillas, I would have been completely laughing at this whole concept. So trust me, if you're like the former me instead of the current me, just know that all of these things are learned skills that you can learn at any point along the journey. It's not something you have to grow up knowing how to do. It's just something you have to have the interest in doing when the time comes. Now, tossing together this bread dough, I'm going to let it set for a few hours while I go in the kitchen and work on a few other projects. Now, before we do that, I want to take just a moment to introduce myself if you're new to the channel. My name is Jill, and I am a homeschooling mom of 5 kids, ages 11 to 3. We moved back home a few years ago to focus on all things homemade and homegrown. And today I want to share some secrets to, kind of running a homemade kitchen, as well as ways that you can cut the budget and feed your family the highest quality food at the lowest price possible. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button because I think you'll like all that we have to share. So now that I have that dough divided up, I am just taking my stainless steel cutting board over to my stove. I have hot griddles here, and I am just going to use my rolling pin to go ahead and gently put them down on the griddle. Now, I'm not going to show you all the ins and outs of this because I have shown this process in the past. If you'd like to see that, make sure to go ahead and check the links in the description below because I will put it in. But after you get them made, they are so soft and so pliable. And at this point, I'm really getting it down to a pretty good spot. So hopefully I'll have that recipe to share soon. Now, with my tortillas complete, my bread had already risen. This is one of the beautiful things about using regular yeast when you're making bread. Now, of course, you're going to hear people talk about sourdough all the time, and I will admit I have a starter. I use it. Sometimes I make sourdough, but I actually don't do it very often when I'm making bread. The reason is that I can use a commercial yeast and have this stuff ready to go, rising completely within an hour and being ready for the second rise. So it's easier to squeeze in when you're using a commercial product. And I feel like there's kind of a stigma around like everything has to be sourdough right now. It totally doesn't. Any bread that you make at home is going to have more nutritional value and fewer preservatives than anything that you get at the store. So if you are one of those people who say, I don't have time for sourdough, totally just find a good sandwich recipe that you can use regular yeast and still make something delicious for your family. Now, when I'm doing a big prep day like this, I always keep a running list on my computer of what I'm doing and what I need to be doing in order to keep everything going. I actually asked ChatGPT to put together my list so I had everything very quickly ready to go instead of putting it all together myself. If you have ever seen my details on how I use ChatGPT to help budget and plan for meals as well as prep, Make sure to go back and check that one out because it was a lot of fun. And in the meantime, I have really been thinking about all of the ways that AI can help me with home management. And I found another one that I want to share with you today after I recently Googled myself and was shocked to find out all of the things that are readily available on the web to anybody that has very basic information about me. Everything from what my house is, my phone number, my previous phone numbers, email address. And while even this felt like an invasion of my personal safety and security, finding out what's on the dark web is a whole nother thing altogether. That brings me to the sponsor of today's video, which is Aura. Aura is an all-in-one digital security system. With the use of AI, Aura can scan the internet, both the dark web and regular online, to do 24/7 monitoring to keep your personal identity secure. You're also getting a VPN, antivirus for your computer and phone, password manager, plus more with US-based around-the-clock support if something goes wrong. But as a mom, my favorite thing Aura offers are parental controls like filtering safe sites, screen time limits, pausing the internet, plus the online history and in-game voice and text monitoring to prevent predators, scams, and cyberbullying. So if you're ready to clean up your online presence, as well as take an extra step to protect your kiddos, go on over to aura.com/hometown homestead to start your 14-day free trial today. You can do so by checking the link in the description or scanning the QR code here on the screen. And I want to thank the good folks at Aura for not only keeping my family safe, but for also sponsoring today's content. And now it's time to jump back into the prepping as we go ahead and prep some baked potatoes for an all too delicious, absolute family favorite around here, which are stuffed baked potatoes featuring that rotisserie chicken that we already pulled earlier in the day. This specific prep is super easy, but saves a whole lot of time on the nights when things are busy and you need to get a meal on the table really fast. So all I'm doing is going ahead, cleaning the baked potatoes, of course, then rubbing them with some oil, salt, and pepper. I did stab them with forks, somehow just didn't get that footage. I'm gonna go ahead and bake them off until the skin is nice and crispy. My idea here is to go sort of like the potato skins that you buy at a restaurant as an appetizer, except on a grander scale. My kids really love those. So in the meantime, while we're cooking, as you can see, went ahead and filled up the Instapot with some eggs so we could have some hard-boiled eggs to have just for snacks or to devil as the week goes on, which is exactly what we're going to end up doing. I will say I am a huge fan of Instapot for hard-boiled eggs, even with super fresh eggs, as you can see here, using the 4-4-4, so 4 minutes at high pressure, 4 minutes natural release, and then 4 minutes in ice. They come off the shells so very simple. And then once I have all of those shells pulled apart, I always take them out and feed them back to my ladies so we can continue to get super hard shells out of our girls and beautiful eggs all year long. If you don't have chickens, I will say if you've ever heard the phrase chicken math, it's super real. It takes just as long to feed, 5 as it does 15. So why not get 30? That's a common little conversation that I have with other chicken owners. I don't have 30, but I do have quite a few. I always get like super excited during the fall thinking I need a few more and order them around Thanksgiving to have the specific kinds that I want. And then when spring comes and they come back kind of laying in full force with all the bounty, I'm always wondering like what I was thinking getting the new chicks. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Bread's out of the oven, potatoes are done. And as you can see here, my loaves just really fall right out of these stone loaf pans and the bread turns out so delicious. If you're worried about your bread kind of sinking in the middle, you can leave it on its side to cool. I haven't really had that problem, so I'm pulling these up. I used to do it the other way, but things evolve just depending on what the day is and how the loaf kind of rose and baked. All help me decide what I'm going to do with it. Okay, so the prep is done, but these meals come together so fast. You're not going to believe how quickly I get 4 separate meals accomplished here. So what I'm doing first is taking out the tortillas that we made a couple days ago. I do keep them frozen. I find that helps them last longer. And when I need to pull them out to use them, I just go ahead and throw them on my griddle to warm them up and they still come out super soft and ready to go. So if you've ever made fresh tortillas and don't know how to save them, I just put them in a bread bag, like a plastic bread bag. I've tried other ones and haven't had much success. If you have a favorite reusable bread bag, definitely go ahead and drop that link in the comments below because I would love to find one that works. But for now, plastic bags and into the freezer, pull them out when I need them. And I usually try to prep quite a few at a time just to make my life a little bit easier. So I'm using cold chicken here, went ahead and chopped some romaine lettuce, and we're making a chicken Caesar wrap. This is something that my crew all loves. We're good salad eaters here at the house. So just a little of the lettuce, some of the chicken, some shredded Parmesan, croutons, and I did go ahead and buy store-bought dressing. Yes, I could have made one at home, and I often do, but for this specific recipe, I have not quite nailed the exact flavor of a Caesar dressing that everybody loves. So I went ahead and got just the bottle of Olive Garden dressing from the store, and I'm putting it right here on top to send these off to my kiddos. Believe it or not, I actually gave my kids the list of all 4 meals that we were going to have, and this is the one that got picked the first. I did send quite a few of them out before the meal was over. It was a huge hit. And right after we got done cleaning up, I went ahead and started the bacon for the next meal, which is the potatoes. Now, you will notice that my girlies are back there having fun. Our house is always busy and our kitchen is always full. So usually they're helping, sometimes they're playing, and at this point they just got done cleaning up the kitchen and we're working on some stuff for their school. Now I'm gonna take some of that chicken that we pulled, put a little bit of my homemade ranch dressing mix in, and an 8-ounce block of cream cheese. You can use this with raw chicken and let it go for a little bit longer to cook inside the pan and then just pull it out and shred it at the end. But since my chicken was already cooked, that's not something that I had to worry about. So all I needed to do was really warm the chicken. Now my girlie here was going to go put that box in the recycle and totally got sidetracked on what she was doing. So after a few quick reminders, we made that happen. But it is always just a delight to watch them grow and learn and be a part of what we're doing. And I do usually try to prep dinner right after lunch, just in an effort to get things ahead as we head into nap time and our afternoon activities. I'm also adding a little bit of homemade chicken stock to the pan. Because I wasn't cooking the chicken from raw, it is not going to make its own juice inside the pan like a raw chicken would. If you are using raw chicken, you wouldn't need to add the extra juice because the chicken would make it itself. But again, seeing as my chicken was already cooked, a little bit of chicken broth, or even if you don't have some, you can put a little bit of water in there, will really help the process. Now, while that's cooking, the bacon was done, and I like to go ahead and cool mine on a cooling rack, just like I would use for the bread. The one problem is when you're pulling it off, you really do need a sheet pan or something else underneath, or all your grease is going to fall on the counter. That's why you see as I'm pulling the bacon out, I'm kind of just sliding my pan down to make sure that I have the pan fully dripping onto the cookie sheet. With the bacon done and the chicken in the pot, I headed off to work on afternoon activities while I let all of this cool down or warm up, depending on which portion we're talking about. Tonight, we're gonna use those baked potatoes, just pulling out the 4 big ones that I used, and I'm gonna cut them completely in half instead of doing like an open style baked potato. With the size of my kiddos being so young, there's no way they're going to eat one of these full, huge russets. So cutting them in half was the perfect answer, and everybody got a lot of the beautiful, crispy outside that we're looking for in a potato skin. The next step is to scoop out the middle and reserve what's left. You can use that for another dish later in the week, or you can go ahead and warm it up the same night and kind of just mash it together with some extra ingredients, similar to a twice bake, and use it as a side. I'll often add sour cream, butter, shredded cheese, just whatever the situation calls for, and have that as an extra side dish later in the week. Before I put these back in the oven to warm up, I am going to rub them with just a little bit of butter so they will have something to not dry out, as well as to kind of soak in and add to the flavor of the processing. Now, the other thing that I made to go with this meal is some asparagus. Now, I'm just roasting it off on the same sheet pan where I made the bacon. The number one reason, or the thing I find or try to do most of the time, is to reuse that same sheet pan that the bacon was on, because a little bit of that bacon grease will add so much flavor to your meal that it is absolutely delicious, specifically with asparagus or any other roasted vegetables. So I set the potatoes on the rack with the asparagus to finish cooking. I do have a second rack for my oven, but because I bake bread so much, it rises into that second rack. So I didn't want to go to the trouble to get it out and put it in there. When I do that, I usually forget to take it back out when I'm preheating, and then I have like a raging hot oven rack to worry about. So I made it work with just putting those potatoes directly on the rack. Now the chicken is done. I went ahead and stirred it up. I did add some 6-pepper seasoning to this to go spice it up just a notch, and cut up the bacon to go down there as well. If you are really working diligently on budget, you can of course leave off the bacon. That is going to save a pretty good chunk of money. It's sad to say. Of course, bacon and eggs, like the all-time favorite breakfast food anywhere, is one of the more expensive things you can get at the store right now. Now, this recipe also called for some green onions on top of the potatoes. And I have to admit, I am so thrilled to be to the point in the season where I don't have to buy green onions anymore. I can just go out and snip off the tops of the onions that I have growing out in my garden. Now, of course, I don't want to do that in perpetuity. I do want them to grow in the end, but I also do, as they start to get a little bit bigger, thin the rows by pulling out a few of the onions and using those as green onions in the meantime. That's one of the reasons that I always like to plant them relatively close together in the beginning of the season, or put more in than I really should, is because through the year, as I'm using those straight out and thinning the rows to work for my produce at the given time, I'll end up with the perfect spacing in the end. Now, once I have those back inside, I'm just using those same scissors to snip them into the perfect size to go right on top of those potatoes. This one comes together really, really fast. Not a lot to do other than to get all of the ingredients piled up. So now that everything is warmed up and ready to go, plating it is, my crew's getting ready to head off to baseball practice. So you'll see lots of movement throughout the house as we get this finished up. But this is something that the kids really, really enjoyed. And actually, after they got back from baseball practice at the end of the night, they were able to take the chicken mixture that was left and use it kind of like a cold chicken salad with crackers to go ahead and give them a late evening snack. I don't know about you, but if you've ever been through young boys that have practice from 6 o'clock at night to 9, with both of their ages being back to back, they definitely want a fourth meal when they get home. So this was a third meal at our house, and fourth meal was a reiteration of the same mixture on crackers to give them something to fill their stomachs before they headed off to bed. Meal number 3 is one of our favorite springtime classics, which is deviled eggs and chicken salad. I am going to use the bread that I made the other day and put it on the stove, toast it up really nice, and have a chicken salad sandwich. But the kids prefer to eat theirs with crackers, so that's what we're going to do. I went ahead and mixed up our old family recipe of deviled eggs. I know there are many, many recipes out there, but every time I go somewhere else and have a deviled egg, it's not quite the same as what I grew up eating. So I will go ahead and put that recipe down below. I don't actually have a link for it yet, but I'm in the process of getting there. So you might see something about that soon. One of my favorite ways to go ahead and fill eggs, which I've seen many over the years, is to just grab a Ziploc, put your hand through and do it inside out to begin with, and then kind of grab and pull until you get everything inside. I did make just a tiny mess on the outside here, but for the most part, everything made it in the bag. Snip the end, and then all you have to do is fill them very, very gently. Now, this works super well on the classic style bags, but if you have like the bags that stand up that kind of have the flatter bottom, it's a real pain. So make sure when you're getting bags, if this is your plan of piping of any sort, whether it be cake icing or egg filling, whatever it is, make sure that you're getting the kind of bags that are the regular one corner style, and that will save you a lot of heartache over the time. Trust me, I've been there multiple times before. Now you're about to see my crew is starting to get hungry. There's going to be some swarming and circling in the kitchen. That's just how it goes around here. So if you are new to my channel and you're curious if this is normal to have my kiddos in and out of the kitchen all the time when I'm recording, it is absolutely that way. This channel is more of a fly on the wall perspective of what it looks like in a busy kitchen with kiddos everywhere. So that's just how it goes around here, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So to make the chicken salad, all I'm doing, I cut up a bunch of onions and celery, quite a bit because I'm going to make a rather large portion here. This is going to serve as the main dish for the majority of the meal today. And then I'm going to add the chicken right on top. Because I am using such a high amount of the vegetables in addition to the chicken, I am going to make sure to give it a very thorough stir before I add the extra ingredients. I don't want anybody to get just a big spoonful of onion or celery, so definitely make sure to get it really blended before you add the mayo to the top. And I do know also that some of you really like grapes in your chicken salad. I am not that person. I don't like grapes in it at all. I also don't like surprise nuts. I know some of you, they're not a surprise, but for me, I don't like a nut somewhere it doesn't belong. I'm not a big fan of nuts and cookies, for example. Anyway, that's another story. But this guy right here is my all-time willing and ready chicken salad taste tester. He's been asking for this one for quite a while since he found out there was chicken in the house. And the night before when he had that cream cheese version, he said it was really good, but it wasn't the real thing. So he said it was good. We did go ahead and add a little bit more salt plus some lemon essential oil to kind of brighten up the flavor. If you have fresh lemons at home, you can give it a squeeze, but we prefer to use the oils just because we don't have to worry about them going bad or stocking the fresh produce, and they're always ready to go, delivering a really potent pack of flavor in just a couple drops. So to his plate, it's Ritz crackers, deviled eggs, as well as the chicken salad. This was his first bowl, but not his last. The other kiddos came in, had similar plates, and everybody was super happy with that one before it was over. Thankfully, we did have a little bit left as well. So that's something that we'll be able to use the leftovers on for days to come. Okay, as we get into meal number 4, it took a little bit of a beating with the rolling pin to get everything ready to go. I do freeze up all the peppers that I bring in the fall to have them ready throughout the year. We're going to use some peppers and onions grilled up in a pan, as well as some shredded cheese that he was giving the beat down to earlier. And we're going to make some quesadillas. Now, of course, this is one that you can really customize to each individual kiddo. They don't all have to be the same. And I do have some that really love the peppers and onions, kind of more the fajita style. But I have another little lady who is a huge fan of barbecue. So I love any kind of meal that I can really customize to their individual tastes without doing too much extra work. Like I'm not making her a whole separate meal. I'm just putting a different sauce on the quesadilla. Instead of adding a little bit of salsa, I'm adding a little bit of barbecue sauce. So this one is super flexible, super cheap, and super, super easy. I do go ahead and use my cast iron griddle to make them, as well as a panini press, like a cast iron press. I had content of that, and somehow I thought I had content of that, I should say. I must have hit the wrong button. There is no footage of that, but I do have footage of getting the peppers and onions ready, as well as making Sis's quesadilla. Okay, so you have the idea on the meals. Now let's talk numbers before all of this wraps up. To purchase everything at the store, not including bulk buying, which is the way I prefer to get my groceries to save the most money, and including everything that I made at home at full price at Walmart, this would come out to $6.39 for all 4 meals for one person, or $1.60 per meal. Now, when I take the time to factor in all of the ingredients that I made at home or grew at home, that cost comes down to $1.18 per serving for my family of 7 for 4 different meals. For me, that's an average that I am very, very happy with. And now I have lots of leftovers to last us a couple extra meals, stretching that cost per plate even further. If this is the kind of content you like, make sure to check out the link right here where you can see more dollar meals ready to go featuring rotisserie chicken, all in a very different way. If you've enjoyed today's content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your way out, and make sure to check out that link in the description to try out your 14-day free trial of Aura today and get your information back off the web.